At Red Ridge Federal Prison, a young white guard thought he could silence a black janitor's hymn with one barked order. But the old man didn't fight back with his fists. He fought with patience, with a silence that carried a pulse. Then the walls started tapping, the cells began to hum, and the entire prison turned into a forbidden choir. And when the call came from the White House, every man who had laughed at him learned what real justice sounds like. The morning at Red Ridge Correctional Facility began with the sound of keys, boots, and the slow hum of fluorescent lights trying to remember what sunlight felt like. On C tier, Marcus Reed moved his mop down the length of the corridor, his rhythm quiet and steady. The floor already shone from a man who took pride in work that no one thanked him for. He was humming, a low, gravelly hymn his mother used to sing while ironing on Sundays. The melody didn't ask permission. It floated, gentle and sure, through the cage of noise and steel, finding ears that hadn't heard peace in a while. From behind the glass of the control bubble, a young guard looked up from his coffee. Travis Cole, new enough to still believe authority was measured in volume, scowled as if the sound offended the concrete. "Hey," he barked, sliding open the door with a buzz and a hiss. "No singing on my floor, janitor. This ain't church." The mop stopped mid-swipe. Marcus turned his head slightly, not enough to challenge, just enough to acknowledge. His voice came calm, the kind that disarmed anger by refusing to feed it. "Morning, officer," he said. "Just keeping time with the work." Cole stepped closer, boots echoing off the tiles. "I said no singing. You people start with songs, you end with trouble." He kicked the mop bucket. It toppled, water spreading in a slow silver wave, soaking the edges of Marcus's shoes. The clang of the bucket rang through the corridor like an insult too loud to take back. For a moment, nobody breathed. Two inmates paused at their cell doors, eyes flicking between the guard and the janitor. Even the radio from the far day room seemed to fade under the hum of waiting. Marcus stared at the spreading water, then at the mop handle he still held upright. He knelt, straightened the bucket, and set the mop back in. "It's all right," he murmured, more to the floor than the man. "Spills happen." Cole's face tightened, searching for the spark that would let him call it defiance. He found none. The silence that followed made him uncomfortable. He wanted the older man to flinch, to argue, to give him something he could write up. But Marcus only wrung the mop and began again, the same slow rhythm, each stroke deliberate, as if cleaning the anger off the world. "You think you're better than the rest of them, don't you?" Cole said, pacing beside him. "All that quiet like it's some kind of halo. You do your job, keep your head down, maybe you'll stay out of the hole." Marcus didn't look up. "Been in worse holes," he said softly. "Some don't have walls you can see." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Cole blinked, unsure whether he'd been insulted or educated. His mouth worked once, then shut. He turned away, muttering something about respect, though no one could tell who he meant it for. The door buzzed as he stepped back into the control bubble, his reflection warping in the thick glass. Marcus continued down the corridor, the hymn returning, quieter now, but steady. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound." Only the first line, a whisper under his breath. Not rebellion, remembrance, the kind of song a man keeps for when he can't afford to speak. Down the hall, an older inmate named Jonas leaned against the bars, watching. "You got a death wish, old man?" he asked, voice rough from years of smoke. Marcus smiled faintly. "Just a tune," he said. "The walls don't mind." Jonas shook his head. Walls hear everything, and they tell him. He jerked his chin toward the bubble, where Cole sat pretending to fill out paperwork, the edge of his mouth twitching like he just remembered he was in charge. A mop squeak later, the buzzer sounded. The shift change. 2 new guards came through, nodding briefly at Marcus. They didn't bother him. They knew his kind. The kind that made the place bearable in small, invisible ways. But Cole wasn't done. Before leaving, he called out from the doorway, his tone light but laced with the kind of cruelty young men mistake for control. Next time I hear you sing Reed, I'll have you cleaning the isolation block. Maybe the echoes can join your choir. Marcus kept his back to him. The hymn stopped, but the rhythm didn't. Each pass of the mop was a measured breath, an act of refusal written in water. When the corridor emptied, Marcus paused. He looked at his reflection in the wet floor, creases at the corners of his eyes, the quiet fatigue of a man who'd lived too long under fluorescent suns. He picked up a small wooden cross that hung loose inside his shirt collar, thumb brushing its worn edges. His mother's words whispered from memory. When they take your song, hum the silence. He glanced toward the control booth. Cole was gone, leaving his coffee cup half full on the desk. The steam had died. Marcus set the mop aside, straightened the bucket once more, and began humming again. Barely a breath. More vibration than sound. It moved through the corridor like something alive. One by one, doors cracked open just enough for eyes to meet light. Jonas mouthed along without a note escaping. Another inmate tapped his finger to the rhythm against the bars. By the time the last streak of water dried, the entire tier was listening. Not to a song, but to the shape of one, carried in the patience of a man who refused to be small. When the buzzer blared again, ending the cleaning shift, Marcus wrung out the mop and whispered, "Work's done." He hung the bucket on its hook, wiped his shoes on the rag by the door, and turned toward the long hall that led to the supply room. His reflection followed him in the glass. One man, one mop, and a silence strong enough to bend steel. From the office above, Warden Briggs, reviewing reports from the morning, glanced at the monitor. The camera caught Marcus closing the supply door gently, as if tucking the world in for the night. For a reason she couldn't name, she lowered the volume on her radio and listened to the quiet that came after. Night at Red Ridge didn't fall so much as it leaked in, slow, thick, and blue through the wire-meshed windows. The noise of the day faded until all that was left was the sigh of the ventilation system and the metallic tick of pipes settling into their fatigue. Marcus Reed sat on a wooden stool in the janitor's closet, the kind of space made for tools, not people. The air smelled of bleach and old wood. A single bulb swung slightly overhead, painting circles of light that came and went across his hands. He reached into the lower drawer of the metal cabinet and pulled out a small canvas bag. Inside was a guitar, missing 2 strings. Its neck cracked, but playable, if you knew how to listen around the flaws. He laid it on his lap and wiped the dust away with a rag that once had been a shirt. From the same bag, he drew a tattered pocket Bible wrapped in an elastic band, and a folded note with the edges worn soft from reading. The ink had faded, but the words still held their shape. Sing, even if they chain your voice. His mother's handwriting, round and unhurried, as if each letter had been said aloud first. Marcus ran his thumb over the string pegs, remembering the way the guitar had sounded before the fall in the supply room, before the rules had changed. The guards called it noise. To him, it was the closest thing to breathing he had left. He twisted one of the pegs and strummed a low chord. The sound was crooked but honest, a sound with a limp. He smiled at it. "We're both still walking?" he murmured. From the adjoining hallway, a voice floated through the vent grill. "You still at it, preacher?" It was Jonas, 2 cells down, voice gravelly with sleep. "Just tuning," Marcus said, keeping his voice soft. Jonas chuckled. "Can't tune what's already broke." Marcus leaned back against the wall, eyes half closed. "You'd be surprised what still sings when it's cracked." Jonas made a low sound, halfway between agreement and surrender. "You still think God's listening in here?" Marcus thought about it. He listens everywhere. Some places just echo louder. Silence filled the rest. The kind that feels like company when you've run out of words. A few minutes later, footsteps approached. The firm, hurried kind that carried rank. Marcus quickly slipped the guitar back into the bag and nudged it under the stool. The door opened, light cutting a hard line across the floor. A guard Marcus didn't know stepped in, clipboard in hand. "Reed, you're on sanitation for the infirmary tomorrow. Double shift. Warden's orders." "Yes, sir," Marcus said. The guard's eyes landed on the open Bible and the folded note beside it. "You hold services now?" "Just reading," Marcus replied. The guard smirked. "Careful. Officer Cole's been itching to write you up again. Says you're spreading—" what did he call it? "Religious disturbance." Marcus nodded once. "He's welcome to write, whatever helps him sleep." The guard gave a short laugh. "You got some mouth on you, old-timer." Then he was gone, the door slamming shut with a rattle of hinges. Marcus let the quiet settle again. He took the note, folded it back into the Bible, and slid both under his pillow of rags. The walls here carried sound in strange ways. Even a hum could find its way into another man's dream. He tapped his fingers gently on the side of the stool, tracing the rhythm of a song that had no name. In his mind, he saw a dirt road in Louisiana, red clay dust rising behind his mother's Sunday shoes. He saw her turning, smiling, singing that same hymn while hanging wet sheets in the yard. The sun had been white-hot that day, the sky the color of forgiveness. He could almost smell the soap, the sweat, the wood smoke. A metallic clang pulled him back. Across the tier, a gate slammed shut and Officer Cole's voice cut through the air. "Lights out means lights out. I hear one more sound, it's solitary." Marcus froze, hand hovering above the stool. The bulb above him flickered, dimmed, then steadied. He waited. The hallway fell quiet. For a long moment, it seemed like the whole prison was holding its breath. Then, as if guided by instinct, he began to tap again. Not a melody this time, just a rhythm, low and patient, like a heartbeat under heavy cloth. The sound was almost nothing, but the concrete floor carried it. A bunk frame somewhere down the corridor picked it up, a second rhythm joining in, syncopated and unsure. Another followed, the sound of knuckles on metal, the hum of a tune half remembered. Cole's footsteps echoed once, then again, heading down the opposite hall. He didn't hear it, at least not yet. The rhythms grew bolder, weaving together, an orchestra of what the prison had tried to forget. Men finding time. Jonas whispered through the vent. "You startin' something, Reed?" Marcus smiled in the dark. "Just keeping time." The tapping faded after a while, but the echo of it stayed, a ghost pulse in the concrete. Marcus lay down, folding his hands behind his head. Above him, the bulb hummed softly, like it too was trying to remember a song. He closed his eyes and whispered a verse under his breath. "The Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and in the night his song shall be with me." Sleep came slow but kind. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, He imagined the rhythm spreading through the walls, through the pipes, through the spaces that separated cell from cell, until the whole building breathed in the same quiet cadence. When the morning buzzer finally screamed awake, the rhythm was gone, but its shape remained. Guards reported nothing unusual. Inmates just looked a little less angry, a little more awake. And as Marcus picked up his mop and stepped back into the corridor's pale light, he noticed something on the wall beside his closet door. 2 small knuckle taps in perfect time, a mark of syncopated dust. He brushed his fingers over it, smiled, and whispered, "Still walking." Morning came with the sound of metal. Locks sliding, trays clanging, gates opening like reluctant mouths. The light in Red Ridge was the kind that never fully woke up, yellow and tired, humming above men who measured their days in shifts and count times. Marcus Reed had already finished the infirmary floors by the time Officer Travis Cole walked in with that look. The one that said he'd been waiting all night for someone to disappoint him. Cole leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching Marcus rinse his mop in the bucket. "You missed a spot," he said. Marcus didn't look up. "Always do. Gives me something to come back for." The guard smiled, but there wasn't an ounce of warmth in it. "You think you're clever, don't you? All them little sayings, acting like you got wisdom in your pocket." "Just habits," Marcus said, wringing the mop. "Keeps the day from feeling empty." Cole walked closer, the rubber soles of his boots squeaking against the wet tile. He nudged the bucket with his toe. "Heard about that little concert last night. Couple of boys down the hall keeping rhythm like they're on a bandstand. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Marcus lifted his head just enough for their eyes to meet. "Men need something to hold on to, officer. Some got cards, some got talk, some got rhythm. Nothing in the handbook against breathing in time." Cole chuckled low. "You see, that right there sounds like you're testing me." "No, sir," Marcus said softly. "Just talking." Cole didn't reply. Instead, he reached over and flicked the mop handle. The bucket wobbled, sloshing water onto the clean floor. "Guess you'll have to start over." He turned on his heel and walked away, whistling off key as if he'd just done a good deed. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at the puddle spreading toward his boots. The other workers nearby had gone silent. Jonas, sweeping in the corner, gave a small shake of his head. "Man like that don't stop till somebody else tells him to," he muttered. Marcus dipped the mop back in and kept going. Then maybe he'll stop on his own one day. By noon, the smell of disinfectant filled the entire block. The prisoners in the day room were restless, voices bouncing off the concrete like marbles in a tin can. Luis, the young Latin inmate who worked laundry, came over with a cart of folded uniforms. "You good, old man?" he asked. Marcus nodded. "Good enough." Luis leaned closer, whispering, "He took your guitar, didn't he?" Marcus didn't answer. The truth sat plain between them. Cole had walked off with the cracked instrument that morning, claiming it was contraband. No report filed, no receipt given. Just gone. Luis's jaw tightened. "He shouldn't—" "Let it be," Marcus interrupted. "A man that angry's already carrying more than he can lift. Don't hand him more." But that evening, when the corridors settled into their post-dinner stillness, Cole came back for another round. This time he had 2 other guards with him, new recruits still learning when to laugh. They stood at the end of C tier, watching Marcus mop near the cells. Cole pointed. "That's the one. Preacher boy thinks he can teach the room manners." He strolled forward, voice loud enough for the whole block to hear. "You got some fans here, Reed. Whole choir last night, I hear. Maybe you want to lead us in another number?" Marcus stopped, wrung the mop, and leaned on the handle. "I don't sing for show, officer." "Good," Cole said, "'cause shows need tickets." He reached down to the bucket, scooped up Marcus's worn cleaning rag, and flung it across the floor. "Pick it up." "I will," Marcus said, "when you're done making your point." Cole's grin vanished. The other guards shifted, unsure if they were about to watch a beating or a lesson. Cole stepped closer, chest puffed. "You forget where you are, janitor?" "No, sir," Marcus said. "I remember exactly." The room's temperature changed. Conversations died. Every man behind every set of bars went still. Cole put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, pressing down hard. "Then start acting like it." Marcus looked at that hand. Scarred, pale, trembling slightly from some old temper he hadn't learned to master. He reached up and lifted it away, not shoving, just removing it, as one might take a child's hand off a hot stove. The simple gesture made something in Cole's face twitch. From one of the cells, Jonas called out quietly, "Leave it, officer. Not worth your pension." Cole turned his head, eyes burning. "What did you say?" Jonas backed up, palms out. "Nothing, man. Just talking." Cole swung back to Marcus. "You think you got everyone fooled with that preacher act? You're no saint. You're a convict like the rest." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Maybe. But I don't need to hate to prove it." Cole's mouth twisted. He snatched the mop handle, yanked it away, and slammed it against the wall. The wooden end cracked. Water spilled again, streaking the floor like gray veins. Luis, who had been watching from the laundry doorway, took a step forward before Jonas grabbed his arm. "Don't," Jonas hissed. Cole kicked the broken handle aside. "Tomorrow, you clean isolation. Might give you time to pray about rules." Marcus stood still, eyes on the floor, hands open at his sides. "Rules don't bother me, officer. Men do." Cole hesitated, waiting for something, anger, pleading, anything he could grab hold of. When nothing came, he turned sharply and walked off. The recruits followed, faces pale. The mop handle rolled in a slow circle before stopping at Marcus's foot. He bent, picked it up, and leaned it against the wall. The crack ran halfway down the shaft, a scar that wouldn't mend. He stared at it for a long while, then whispered, "Still useful." That night, the air in Red Ridge was thick with the kind of quiet that meant everyone had heard what happened. Luis slipped into the janitor's closet after count, holding something wrapped in a torn towel. He closed the door and handed it over. Inside was a guitar string, new, clean, silver. "Found it in laundry," he said. "Came off a broom handle. Thought maybe it fits." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that forgave the world without excusing it. "It'll fit just fine." Luis sat on an overturned bucket while Marcus replaced the broken string, fingers steady despite the bruised knuckles. When the tuning felt right, Marcus plucked a single note. It trembled, hung in the air, and settled into the walls like smoke. "Teach me that song," Luis said quietly. Marcus looked up. "You sure you want to learn something they'll call a crime?" Luis nodded. "If it keeps me from forgetting who I am, yeah." So Marcus hummed the melody, slow and patient, the same one that had gotten him written up. Luis followed, off-key but eager. In the corridor outside, a guard passed by, footsteps slowing as he caught the faint echo of sound. He paused, listening. But by the time he opened the door, the music had vanished. Only the smell of bleach and the drip of a leaking pipe remained. "Everything fine in here?" the guard asked. Marcus nodded. "Just cleaning up." When the door closed, he looked at Luis. "That's enough for tonight." Luis grinned. "Guess the walls learned the tune." Marcus chuckled softly. Walls always do. He watched the younger man slip back into the hall, shoulders straighter than before. Alone again, Marcus plucked the string once more, barely audible, then laid the guitar across his knees. The sound lingered in the air long after he stopped playing, as if the building itself was humming along. Morning paperwork at Red Ridge stacked up the way winter drifts do. Quiet, relentless, and edged with the kind of cold that seeps into the bones. Warden Eleanor Briggs rubbed the bridge of her nose and stared at the line of incident reports that all felt like the same story told by different pens. Her office smelled faintly of old coffee and the varnish of a desk that had seen better oaths. A man from maintenance had left his toolbox under the window and promised to fix the blinds tomorrow, which meant the light cut her office in uneven bars, gold on one side, dull on the other. She reached for the next folder and pulled out a bundle she hadn't logged yet. Letters in mismatched envelopes, some with careful handwriting, some in block print, like a child learning to behave. Church seals. Return addresses from neighborhoods with wide porches and from towns whose names looked like they'd been misspelled by history. She slit the first envelope with a paperclip and read in the slow cadence of people who still believe that words tend gardens. We are writing to request that our member, Mr. Marcus Reed, be permitted to sing a hymn quietly during his assigned cleaning shift on Sundays. The next one came from a pastor across the county line. A hymn harms no one but lifts many. The third was a stack clipped together, signatures in blue and black, someone's grandmother underlining a sentence twice, as if that could make it truer. He sang at my brother's funeral after Katrina when the church had no electricity. Please let him sing now. Briggs let the papers rest. She could hear Cole's voice even when he wasn't in the office. Policy's policy, ma'am. She'd lived long enough to know policy could be a shield for cowards or a spine for the righteous. And sometimes both in the same hour. A laminated memo from the department lay at the corner of her desk, the one that advised against unstructured religious gatherings. It had been written by a lawyer there who'd probably never listened to the way a hymn can turn a room from a weapon back into a shelter. She moved the memo with one finger like it disgusted her, but might yet be useful. Through the office glass, she caught the grainy feed from C-tier. Marcus, shoulders bent to his work, pushing a mop like a man steering a boat through low water. 2 inmates passed and gave him the kind of nod that made her wonder what had softened in them. No sound on the monitor, just lips moving, hands lifting, eyes flicking in some unspoken rhythm. She turned up the volume anyway. Nothing but the hiss of fluorescent lights. She reached for her phone, dialed a number that brought her the nurse's station. "Harper," she said when the line clicked. "How's our janitor after that dust-up?" Nurse Harper's voice had the burr of someone who slept badly, but told the truth even when it was inconvenient. "He's fine. Ankle bruised, knuckles a little raw. Blood pressure where you'd expect. For a man who holds his breath for other people. He still hums under his breath." Briggs looked at the letters again. If a man hums and nobody writes it down, is it still against the rules? Harper let out that quiet, tired laugh of women who've seen too many men try to outshout the world. "Depends who's listening, ma'am." Down on the floor, Luis peeled open the door to the laundry like he was trying not to wake a sleeping dog. The room was a warm cave of steam and lint. Machines thudding like giant hearts, the smell of detergent sweet enough to ache. Marcus sat on an upturned crate with a guitar across his knee, the crack down its neck bandaged with tape borrowed from the infirmary. A string lay in a loop on the table, bright as fish line. Luis held up a short coil he'd cut from the metal spine of a broken push broom. "Told you it'd fit," he said with that sideways grin young men use to hide reverence. Marcus took it gently. They'll think you're building a weapon. Guess I am, Louise said. For your side? The old man's smile lit in his eyes first. He threaded the wire through the tuning peg, pulled it tight, and worked the key with a patience that made the room hush. The machine thunked. The steam sighed. But the sound that rose from that guitar when he plucked the new line felt like a lid coming off a jar. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was tuned to the room itself. Louise leaned closer. Teach me the line you said last night, he murmured. Marcus nodded. He didn't sing it. He spoke it like he was handing over a match and a rule about where to aim the flame. You can lock the door, he said, picking the chord so soft it was almost a breath. But you can't chain the song. Luis repeated it, a little clumsy, like a prayer he hadn't learned the cadence of yet. They tried it again, and this time Marcus added the bones of a melody, the habit of centuries' call and response that used to live in fields and back porches, in kitchens and basements, where men and women taught themselves to be larger than the room measured. The laundry's cinder block walls gave the sound back, rounder. From the open doorway, Jonas appeared as if the song had written his name on the air. He stayed in the threshold, eyes careful. You boys crazy or faithful? He asked. Sometimes you can't tell the difference till later, Marcus said. They heard a tread in the hall and froze. Not boots, sneakers. The young tech who tended the cameras at night was making his rounds, a kid with headphones around his neck and an opinion about everything that wasn't dangerous. He paused, peered in. Anything broken? He asked, glancing for the legitimate reason to be in a room where men had no business making music. Washer 3's rattling, Luis said, straight-faced. Might throw a belt. The kid nodded. I'll log it. He looked at the guitar a beat too long, then back to, well, the door. Camera by the bleach sink keeps stuttering, he added, as if to himself. Probably a blanket in the way. He left before anyone could agree or disagree, and the three in the room exhaled without meaning to. Jonas muttered, almost to the floor, God bless the lazy and the brave. They sometimes look the same. They played nothing for a while and let the room rest. Then Marcus slid the guitar back into its canvas sleeve with the tender practicality of a man who has learned to hide what he loves. He tore a piece of packing tape from a dispenser and used it to secure the loose latch on the closet where he'd keep it, folding the tape edges under so it could be lifted in a hurry without tearing. Some songs, he said, you play with your hands. Some you play by the way you carry yourself. Luis wiped his palms on his pants. And some you play by who hears them, he said, looking like he'd surprised himself. They cleaned the room like men do when they want to leave no fingerprints, then filed out. In the corridor, Harper came from the infirmary with a clipboard pressed against her chest. The universal armor of women who do impossible work and keep receipts. She caught Marcus's eye, hesitated, then said, I'm not supposed to say this, but when you hum during dressing changes, my patients grip less and bleed less. Whatever that's worth in the rule book. Worth more than ink, Marcus said. Thank you. Cole appeared at the far end of the hall with the short, predatory walk of a man who thinks speed is proof. He saw them together, Reed, the nurse, the kid from laundry, and slowed the way men slow when their story meets a mirror. Break time over, he snapped, eyes on Marcus, as if everyone else were wallpaper. Reed, janitor's closet, now. The rest of you find a reason to be elsewhere. Harper tilted her head toward Cole with a politeness that had razor wire in it. I'm elsewhere, she said mildly, turning. Luis started to step forward. Marcus brushed his sleeve and he stopped. "Let it pass," Marcus whispered. In the janitor's closet, Cole stood by the open cabinet. The guitar case was not where Marcus had left it. The shelf was empty, the dust disturbed. Cole didn't look at the shelf. He looked at Marcus, waiting for the ache to surface. "Inventory check," he said. "Missing items get disposed of." Marcus studied him the way a good mechanic studies a knock in the engine. Patient, not fooled. "Things disappear around here," he said evenly. "Sometimes they return when they remember who bought them." Cole's grin had too many teeth. "Sing that to the disciplinary board," he said, stepping past him and flicking the light off as if that were a victory. The door clicked behind him. In the half-dark, Marcus let the anger rise and pass the way a wave does when you remember you know how to float. He put his hands on the shelf and just stood, back, loosening, breath easing until his heartbeat lost its sprint. He pressed his palm to the cinder block and felt, under the cold, the faintest tremor. A washer thudding, a pipe shivering, or maybe the memory of a note. He smiled at the wall. "Stubborn old house," he said. "You remember?" Upstairs, Briggs took a pen and underlined a sentence in the first letter, then underlined it again, not for policy, but for courage. She buzzed her secretary. "Make a copy of these and log them. Then send this stack to legal with my note. I want to know exactly where the line is and who drew it, and called maintenance to fix that camera by the bleach sink on C tier." She paused. "Actually, wait on the camera." "Ma'am?" "Just wait." The afternoon sloped toward evening. In the dim, a blanket had somehow been draped just so over the camera's angle near the laundry, and no one seemed in a hurry to remove it. On C tier, someone knocked twice on a cell door, soft, the way men ask for permission when they've forgotten what it feels like to be allowed. Another man answered with the same 2 knocks. No song. Not yet. Just a code that meant, "I hear you." Marcus walked past the places where the paint had worn thin and could almost see the hands that had done the wearing, years stacked like chairs at the end of a meeting. He paused at the supply closet and found, tucked behind a stack of brown paper towels, the canvas guitar bag he hadn't dared hope to see again. No note. Just the fact of it. Returned. He didn't need to guess who had done it. In prisons, mercy rarely leaves a signature. He drew the zipper a thumb's length and saw the shine of the new wire. He closed it again and placed the bag where the shelf sagged a little less. By lights out, the letters from the churches were in a manila envelope with Briggs's handwriting on the tab. A neat, narrow script that took responsibility for what it said. She took it home by mistake or on purpose. Even she couldn't say which. On her kitchen table, under a lamp that made everything look closer, she reread the line about funerals and electricity and the way a hymn behaves when the room needs it. She stared a long time at the signed names, the shaky ones, the bold ones, the printed ones from the men who never learned to enjoy cursive. Then she leaned back and listened to the kind of quiet you don't get in a prison. She found herself humming without meaning to, a thin scaffold of a tune she hadn't let herself sing in years. At Redridge, the night guard walked past the laundry and paused. The blanket still hung where someone had left it, a careless accident carefully done. He sighed, pretended not to see, and kept moving. In the janitor's closet, Marcus sat on his stool and tuned the guitar by touch, turning each peg until the string lay where it belonged. He didn't sing. He spoke the line to the empty room, the way a man gives himself orders he intends to keep. "You can lock the door," he said softly, "but you can't chain the song." Somewhere in the building, a bunk answered with 2 slow knocks, and then another, And then the stillness after. A stillness that didn't feel like fear, but like a room preparing to open its mouth. The day heat at Red Ridge carried the kind of weight that made men lose patience before breakfast. The fans above the tier only stirred the air enough to move the smell around: sweat, bleach, old steel. Marcus Reed worked the mop in slow, careful circles near the end of the hall, sleeves rolled, rhythm steady. He wasn't singing. Not a hum, not a word. He'd learned that quiet could buy peace, but it didn't always earn it. Luis came down from laundry, pushing a cart stacked high with folded jumpsuits, humming a tune Marcus recognized. The boy caught his eye and smirked. "Wasn't me," he said. "The wall started it." Marcus smiled back and shook his head. "Careful who hears you. These walls got informants." From the control booth, Travis Cole's voice cracked over the speaker. "Reed, I said mop, not chat hour." Marcus turned toward the booth and lifted the mop like a salute. "Yes, sir." Cole held his gaze a second longer than necessary before killing the mic. There was something in that stare, something like a dare. At lunch, tempers ran high. A white inmate named Vickers, built like a truck and angry as one, shoved Luis at the serving line. "Move it, choir boy." The tray hit the floor. Rice scattered. Luis straightened, jaw tight, ready to swing. Marcus was 2 tables away and moved before anyone else did. He caught Luis's arm and held it. "Not like this," he said quietly. Vickers laughed. "Listen to your daddy, kid." The room tensed. A guard yelled, "Break it up!" But his voice was half-hearted. Then Cole entered, walking like a man who believed rules only mattered when he made them. He saw the scene, looked at Luis's clenched fists, at Marcus standing between them. "What's the problem here?" "Nothing," Marcus said. "Just a spill." Cole's eyes moved to Vickers, who grinned wide. "He started humming again," Vickers said, pointing at Marcus. "Right before the food went flying. Got the others all twitchy. You better nip it." Cole's smile returned, thin and sharp. "That true, Reed?" Marcus didn't blink. "No, sir. But if you say it was, it will be." Cole's voice dropped low enough only Marcus could hear. "You keep pushing me. I'll push back harder." Marcus held his gaze. "Then we'll both learn something." An hour later, Cole filed a report. Inmate Reed inciting disturbance through unauthorized religious expression. The paperwork moved fast, faster than justice ever did. By evening, a new policy memo came down from administration. Effective immediately, no singing, humming, rhythmic tapping, or musical expression permitted in common areas or work assignments. Briggs read it twice, then set it aside like a hot pan. She wanted to tear it up but knew better. "Control the noise, control the men," the note from headquarters had said. It might as well have read, "Break what you don't understand." By the time the guards posted the notice on the tier, the place had gone still. Even conversation dimmed, like everyone had swallowed the same bad taste. Luis muttered under his breath, "They scared of songs now." Jonas replied, "They always were. Songs make men remember they're more than numbers." That night, Cole took the late round himself. He walked the corridors with his flashlight grazing the walls, proud of the silence he'd bought. The beam passed over Marcus, kneeling by the baseboards, scrubbing the edges of the floor. Cole stopped. "New rule suits you?" he said. "Finally, some quiet." Marcus wrung his rag, water dripping onto the clean tile. "Quiet's easy," he said. "Peace takes work." Cole frowned. "You mocking me?" "No, sir. Just saying what's true." Cole leaned in close, voice tight. "Truth's whatever I write in the report." Then he turned and walked off, his boots echoing like hammers. When the lights dimmed to night mode, the prison settled into its version of sleep, uneasy, shallow, half-real. Marcus finished the haul, stored the mop, and returned to his small room off the laundry. He sat on his stool, staring at the guitar case on the shelf. His hand hovered over it, then stopped. He wasn't going to risk it. Not now. Instead, he drummed a soft rhythm with his fingers against his thigh, no louder than breathing. Somewhere down the tier, a man coughed in time with it. Another answered with 2 slow taps on his bunk frame. The rhythm caught, subtle, passing from cell to cell like a secret handshake. It was nothing anyone could prove, just small sounds lost in the hum of the vents. Then came the voice. One voice. Weak, off-key, breaking halfway through a note, but it carried. Amazing grace. Marcus froze. He didn't know who started it. Maybe Luis, maybe Jonas. Maybe the building itself had decided to sing. Another voice joined, then another, until the corridor shimmered with sound, a fragile choir threading through concrete and wire. Cole heard it from the control booth. He jumped to his feet, grabbed the mic. "Shut it down! Anyone caught singing goes to the hole!" His voice blared over the PA, but the hymn rolled right over it, swelling, spreading to the next tier, the next block. Guards rushed out, shouting orders that vanished under the chorus. Some inmates stood at their doors, hands raised. Others simply closed their eyes and let the words find them. The music wasn't rebellion. It was memory, defiance, without violence. In the infirmary, Harper looked up from her desk. "Oh, Lord," she whispered. "They're singing." Briggs, watching from her office monitor, stood slowly, her hand over her mouth. She could see Marcus at the center of it all, not leading, just standing still, head bowed, as if holding the sound in place with his quiet. The warden's radio crackled. "Ma'am, we're losing control," a captain shouted. "They're all singing, every tier." Briggs's voice came calm, even. "Then let them finish." But Cole didn't wait for orders. He stormed down the stairs, keys clanging, face red. "Read," he yelled. "Enough!" He pushed through the line of cells until he was inches from Marcus. The music kept rising. Cole grabbed his arm. "I said stop." Marcus turned slowly, eyes steady. You can't stop a prayer once it starts. Cole's fist twitched, but never landed. Behind him, the entire block sang the next line together, louder this time. Even guards hesitated, unsure whether to shout or listen. The hymn climbed the air vents, reached the ceiling, and spilled into every corner of Red Ridge. For a few minutes, the prison didn't sound like a prison. It sounded like people remembering themselves. When the last note faded, silence didn't return the same way it had left. It came soft, trembling, alive. Cole stood in it, breathing hard. His flashlight hung from his hand, beam trembling across the wall. He didn't say another word. He just walked off, the keys at his belt rattling like loose change. Marcus leaned against the mop handle, sweat glinting on his temples. Luis caught his eye through the bars and nodded once. No victory, no applause. Just understanding. Up in her office, Warden Briggs shut off the monitor. She knew what the reports would say in the morning. Unauthorized gathering, incitement, breakdown of order. But what she'd seen didn't fit any of those words. She sat back, staring out the window at the fence line and the moonlight trapped there like wire on fire. Down below, Marcus gathered his tools and whispered to the empty hallway. They'll call it a riot, but it was only a song. When the alarms finally died, the air in Red Ridge hung thick with smoke from its own noise. The hymn had dissolved into silence, the way a wave leaves foam. Bright for a breath, then gone. Marcus Reed stood where he'd been the whole time, mop in hand, shoes wet from the overflow of his own bucket. Around him the men had gone quiet, heads bowed or eyes lifted, as if they'd just remembered the ceiling was there. The guards moved through the tier in careful steps, not shouting now, just counting. No one resisted. No one spoke. A few looked ashamed to still be holding their batons. Cole stood in the middle of the corridor, chest heaving, face damp. For the first time since anyone could remember, he didn't have a single order to give. He just pointed at Marcus. "Isolation," he said hoarsely. His voice cracked on the word. "Take him." Two officers moved, hesitant. Marcus nodded, offering his wrists before they could decide how rough to be. The cuffs clicked, cold and clean. He didn't resist. He just looked at Cole and said, "You can quiet a room, son, but you can't make it forget what it heard." Cole didn't answer. He turned and walked the other way, boots slapping too loud against the tile. They led Marcus down the narrow back hallway, past laundry and the shuttered chapel, into a section of the prison that smelled like old rain and bleach. The isolation cells were small enough that the door opened into half your air. The guard on duty, Alvarez, had gray at his temples and eyes that still remembered how to feel. He unlocked a cell, gestured. "You want a blanket, Mr. Reed?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Keep it. Someone will need it worse." When the door shut, the light stayed on. The bulb buzzed, flickered. He sat on the floor and leaned against the wall, palms open on his knees. He thought of the hymn, how it had risen from nowhere, from everyone and no one, like smoke finding every crack. He could still hear it in the ringing of his ears. Maybe it hadn't stopped at all. Maybe silence was just the song's other side. Up in the control room, the cameras showed grainy black and white footage of men still at their doors, motionless. Lips parted as if something holy had passed too close to name. Briggs watched the feed alone. The captain had gone to file his report. Cole had disappeared somewhere below. The warden leaned forward and turned up the monitor's volume. Nothing but the static hum of electricity. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Then she noticed something. Every microphone on the C-tier read active, yet no one was speaking. She frowned, adjusted the gain, and heard it. A low vibration, not voice, not machine. It pulsed faintly, rhythmic, like the building itself had a heartbeat. "Maintenance?" she radioed. "I'm getting interference on channel 3. A tired voice came back. "Not us, ma'am. That's internal feed. Maybe a feedback loop." Briggs turned off the speaker, but the sound didn't leave her head. She rubbed her temples, whispered, "No, that's not feedback." In the infirmary, Harper sat by a window, charting vitals for a diabetic inmate who'd finally fallen asleep. The lights flickered once, then steadied. She looked toward the hallway where the hymn had rolled like a storm and felt tears threaten. Not for sadness, something older. She closed the file and whispered the last line of the song under her breath. The sleeping man stirred but didn't wake. Back in isolation, Marcus rested his head against the concrete and began to tap lightly, just one knuckle against the wall, steady as a pulse. A few seconds later, from somewhere above, came an answering tap. Then another, farther down. The sound moved through the block like Morse code without a language, just rhythm calling to rhythm. He smiled in the dark. Cole sat alone in the locker room, tie undone, staring at his reflection in the dull metal door of his locker. His hands shook, not from anger, but from something harder to name. When he closed his eyes, he heard the hymn again, not the words. just the sound of hundreds of voices filling the air where he used to think rules lived. He pressed his palms to his ears, but it only grew clearer. The sound wasn't in the air anymore. It was under his ribs. He muttered, "They broke the rules," but it didn't sound convincing, even to him. At midnight, the generator hiccuped. The lights dimmed across the compound, then stabilized. Briggs ordered a full systems check. The tech came up the stairs, pale. "Ma'am," he said, "you should see this." He set a laptop on her desk, screen showing the seismic feed from the prison's foundation sensors, tools meant to catch vibrations from tunneling. The line spiked at 11:47 and stayed elevated for 3 minutes. "No structural movement," the tech said, but it registered like the walls were humming. Briggs stared at the screen. "And now? Back to normal?" She exhaled. "Good. Leave it." When he left, she sat a long time in the half-dark, fingers steepled under her chin. Then she picked up the phone and dialed the infirmary. "Harper," she said softly. "Reed's in isolation. Check on him in the morning." "Understood," Harper said. "He all right?" Briggs looked toward the monitor where Marcus sat cross-legged on the cell floor, still and calm. "He looks like he's praying," she said. "Then he's fine," Harper replied and hung up. At 2 a.m., the night shift passed through the halls, flashlights cutting slices into the dark. They found every inmate asleep, except 1 or 2 murmuring softly to themselves. The reports in the logbook said nothing unusual, just tier secure, inmate Reed in isolation per order. No mention of what had happened. No one wanted to be the one to describe it. Just before dawn, Marcus woke to the pale blue light seeping under the door. The bulb overhead had burned out, leaving the cell washed in colors softer than anything Redridge usually allowed. He stood, stretched his back, and found a folded scrap of paper pushed through the food slot. It was a page torn from a medical notepad, written in neat handwriting. "You're not forgotten. H." He smiled, folded it twice, and tucked it into the pocket of his shirt. When the guards came for him at shift change, Cole wasn't among them. Alvarez opened the door gently, cuffs in hand, but eyes kind. "Orders say you're cleared to return to work," he said. "That quick?" Marcus asked. Alvarez shrugged. Guess the warden figured the point was made. As they walked back toward C-tier, the corridor smelled faintly of coffee and something else. Ozone, maybe, like the air after lightning. The prison was too quiet. Men glanced out from behind their doors as Marcus passed. No one spoke, but a few lifted their hands, palm open, the way churchgoers do when a benediction lands where words can't follow. When Marcus reached his closet, he saw the mop, the bucket, everything in its place. And leaning against the wall beside them, clean and whole, was his guitar. The crack on its neck had been sanded, sealed, polished. No note, no name, just the fact of its return. He picked it up, strummed once. The sound rang true. The vibration ran through the floor, up the walls, into the bones of the building. Somewhere down the hall, a door hinge sang faintly in harmony. Marcus closed his eyes and let the chord fade. "Good morning, Redridge," he whispered. Outside, the first light touched the razor wire and turned it to silver. Inside, the prison exhaled, a long, low breath that felt like relief disguised as silence. And though no one sang, every man who'd been there the night before carried the echo inside him, like a pulse that couldn't be ordered out of existence. The morning after the hymn felt like the day after a storm that had swept through quietly, but left everything changed. The sun came up sharp over the razor wire, flashing against the dew and the towers. But the light inside Redridge carried a different kind of weight. You could feel it in the way the guards spoke lower, in the way the inmates walked the corridors like men returning from a long, strange dream. The tiers smelled of coffee and disinfectant, the normal scent of order. But beneath it, there was something human and warm, like air that had remembered how to breathe again. Marcus Reed was back on the floor, mop steady in his hands, humming only in his head. He didn't need sound now. The melody lived in the motion. When Louise passed by on laundry duty, he offered a grin that barely stayed behind his lips. "They can ban songs," he whispered, "but not echoes." Marcus smiled. "Echoes do their own time," he said. Upstairs, Warden Eleanor Briggs was halfway through her morning coffee when the phone rang. She didn't recognize the number on the screen, DC area code. She picked up with the automatic weight of someone expecting trouble. "Briggs," she said. A calm male voice answered, clipped and professional. "This is Major Lawson, Veterans Affairs, Washington. I'm trying to confirm the whereabouts of a former medic named Marcus Ezekiel Reed." Briggs sat up, cup forgotten. "He's here," she said carefully. "Redridge Correctional. May I ask the nature of your inquiry?" There was the faint rustle of paper on the other end. "We've received correspondence from several veterans organizations. Mr. Reed is listed as the recipient of a Presidential Medal of Valor for service in Syria. Records indicate a clerical error during his trial expunged that recognition from his file. The department has requested clarification from the State Corrections Office, but your facility was listed as his current placement. Is the warden available to speak?" Briggs blinked. "You're speaking to her?" "I see. Ma'am, please prepare for official contact from the White House Office of Military Affairs. There's a directive being drafted to review his conviction in full." Her pulse quickened. "Wait, you're saying—" "I'm saying you'll want to have his file ready. And if I may, ma'am, tell your staff to treat him accordingly. The president doesn't like surprises when they involve his medal recipients." When the line went dead, Briggs sat very still. The coffee had gone cold. The file in front of her blurred. For a long time, the only sound in the office was the tick of the wall clock. Then she stood, slow and deliberate, the way a person stands before saying something that will matter. She pressed the intercom button. "Captain Alvarez, come to my office. Bring Reed's record." 10 minutes later, she was walking down to C tier, her heels softer than usual on the concrete. 2 guards followed, but at a respectful distance. When she reached the end of the corridor, the men inside their cells stepped back without being told. It wasn't fear, more like instinct, the kind animals have when the weather shifts. Marcus was by the supply closet, wiping down his mop handle. He turned when he heard the footsteps. "Ma'am," he said. His tone carried neither surprise nor expectation. Briggs studied him for a heartbeat. The light fell across his face, the deep lines, the calm eyes that seemed to know more than they told. "Mr. Reed," she said, using the title on purpose, "I need you to come with me." Cole appeared from the far end, hearing her voice. "Warden?" he said, cautious. "You sure about that? He's on restricted—" She cut him off without looking his way. "Not anymore." He hesitated, eyes flicking between them, his throat working like he wanted to argue but didn't have the strength. Briggs turned slightly. "Officer Cole, you'll accompany us. Might do you some good to see how the world looks in daylight." The walk to her office was quiet, except for the scuff of boots. Marcus kept his hands clasped in front of him, not chained this time. Louise watched from the laundry gate, jaw slack, until Jonas nudged him. "Told you," Jonas murmured. "Truth always takes the stairs, but it gets there." In the office, Briggs gestured to a chair. Marcus sat, posture straight. She opened a folder and slid a printed email across the desk. The official seal of the United States glowed faintly on the header. "This came this morning," she said. "Apparently, the world's been watching you longer than we have." Marcus read the lines slowly. His lips didn't move, but his eyes did. When he reached the end, he let out a long, quiet breath. "That was a long time ago," he said. Briggs nodded. "Maybe, but it still matters. The President's office has requested a full case review. They'll be contacting me directly within the hour. I'm told you were wrongly convicted during a conflict of testimony. A corporal's report disappeared. It's resurfaced." Cole stood by the door, face pale. "Warden, you can't be serious. He's an inmate." She turned on him, voice low but sharp. "He's a decorated combat medic who saved 27 men under fire and got blamed for one he couldn't. Sit down, officer." He didn't move at first. Then he did. The sound of the chair legs against tile felt like a confession. Briggs looked back at Marcus. "They're moving quickly, but bureaucracies like to eat their own tail. Until the paperwork catches up, you're still under my watch. But you'll be treated with the respect due to a man who's already served more than one sentence." Marcus's eyes softened. "I didn't expect this." "No one ever does when it's justice," she said. Then, after a pause, "Tell me something, Mr. Reed. Why didn't you say who you were?" Smiled faintly. "Some stories don't sound right when you tell them yourself. Better to let time speak." A knock came at the door. Alvarez stepped in, handing her a fax fresh from the machine. She scanned it, then slid it to Marcus. The bold header read, "Official notification, presidential case review, immediate priority." Under it, his name, his rank, his commendations. At the bottom, the president's signature, a scrawl that carried more power than anyone deserved. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the room. Cole shifted in his chair, eyes on the paper. "So, what happens now?" he asked quietly. Briggs looked at him. "Now, officer, you learned something they don't teach in academy. When you break a man's dignity, you don't erase it. You just hand him more reasons to forgive you later." She picked up the phone and dialed the captain of discipline. "Cancel the isolation orders," she said, "and prepare a transfer for Officer Cole, administrative leave, grounds, conduct review." Cole's jaw tightened. "Ma'am." "Don't, Travis," she said gently. "The thing about echoes is they always come home." He swallowed, nodded once, and left the office without another word. Briggs turned back to Marcus. "You'll stay in the infirmary tonight until I get confirmation. I want you under supervision, not as punishment, but protection. We both know how some men take bad news." Marcus stood, extending his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm but kind. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For listening before you were told to." As Alvarez escorted him out, Briggs sank into her chair and stared at the window. The sun was higher now, the light pouring in clean and white. She thought of the night before, the song, the vibration in the walls, the way even silence had felt holy. She realized then that what she'd felt wasn't rebellion. It was redemption, wearing work boots and holding a mop. Down the corridor, guards paused to let Marcus pass. None of them spoke, but one, a rookie with freckles and a heart too new for the job, muttered, "Sir," as he moved aside. The word hung in the air longer than sound should. Marcus didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just nodded, hand brushing the string of his repaired guitar as he walked. The note that came from it was soft, accidental, but pure as morning. And somewhere beyond the gates, in an office with more flags than windows, a phone began to ring again, this time from the White House. The afternoon light spilled through the narrow windows like it was searching for somewhere decent to land. Redridge hadn't felt that kind of quiet in years. Not the tense, waiting kind, but a steady hush that came after something true had been spoken out loud. Word had already moved through the tiers faster than paper could carry it. Marcus Reed, the man they'd silenced, was getting out. Not someday. Soon. Even the men who didn't believe in hope straightened when they heard it, like their backs remembered prayers their mouths had forgotten. He was in the infirmary, sitting by the window where sunlight painted a small square on the floor. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. Harper came in holding a clipboard and a smile she couldn't hide. "They're finishing the paperwork," she said. "By tomorrow, maybe a week at most." "It's happening, Marcus." He nodded, eyes on the patch of light. "Feels strange," he said softly. "Freedom's supposed to be out there, but it's been here all along." Harper leaned against the counter. "You taught them something, you know. About quiet, about dignity. Half the men in here been asking me to bring them hymn lyrics to copy down. Even a few guards." Marcus smiled. "Walls remember music better than men. They'll teach it back if you listen long enough." Outside the window, 2 inmates were sweeping the yard. One of them started tapping his broom in a steady beat. Another joined, off rhythm but trying. Harper noticed, laughed quietly. "Guess the walls are already teaching." There was a knock at the door. Warden Briggs stepped in, hat under her arm, face lined but lighter than before. "Mr. Reed," she said, "I have something for you." She handed him a small envelope with an embossed seal. Inside was a formal letter printed on thick paper, presidential insignia at the top, his name beneath. It was written in careful language about honor, error, and restitution, but he barely read past the first line. He just traced his finger over the gold stamp, the words, "By order of the President of the United States." "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "Don't," she replied. "Just keep singing, if that's still allowed." He looked at her and smiled. "You know, the funny thing about permission, it never made a song any louder." Briggs exhaled through her nose, half laugh, half admission. "Fair point." She hesitated at the door. "They're releasing Officer Cole from his duties. He turned in his badge this morning. Left a note for you." She handed over a folded sheet of lined paper. Marcus opened it. The handwriting was uneven, heavy in places like the writer had fought the words. "I couldn't stop what I didn't understand. You showed me what I was trying to control wasn't noise, it was grace. I hope one day I can listen the way you do." Marcus folded the letter neatly. "He'll find his way," he said. "Some lessons need silence to finish teaching." Briggs nodded. "If the world had more men like you, I'd be out of a job." "That'd be fine by me," he said. And she laughed, genuine this time, before leaving him alone with the sound of the clock and the low hum of life returning to normal. When evening came, they walked him back through the main corridor so he could gather what little was his. A guard carried the folder of personal effects: Bible, cross, pocket knife, and 1 repaired guitar. The same guard, a young man with freckles and a heart too soft for the job, said quietly, "Sir, the warden's letting us assemble in the day room. Said it's your send-off." Marcus blinked. I didn't ask for it. Didn't say you did, the guard said, smiling. The day room looked different under the low light. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, some against the walls, some behind the tables. Quiet, but not stiff. Luis was there, eyes bright. Jonas leaned on a cane he didn't need just to look distinguished. Harper stood near the back, beside Briggs, who had folded her hands behind her. Marcus stopped in the doorway. No one spoke. Then Louis stepped forward and handed him the guitar. "We fixed the strap," he said. "Thought you might need it where you're going." Marcus held it for a long second. "They'll call this insubordination," he said softly. Briggs lifted an eyebrow. "They can send the memo to Washington." That broke the tension. A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the room. Marcus sat on the nearest bench, adjusted the strings, and let his fingers find a familiar shape. The first chord rose up like a breath. Then he began to sing. The voice that came out wasn't perfect. It cracked on the edges, wove through the notes like a road full of turns. But it was alive. The sound spread across the day room, bounced off the glass, softened against the cinder block, and came back warmer than when it left. The men joined in, one by one, voices rough and deep and human. Even the guards at the doors hummed under their breath. Outside, the light dimmed to that gray hour between day and night. The fences caught what was left of the sun and held it in their wire like a captured star. Inside, the hymn filled the space until it wasn't a prison anymore. It was a church without walls. When the song ended, no one moved right away. The silence that followed was full, not empty. Briggs wiped her eyes before anyone noticed. Harper turned away, pretending to check her watch. Luis clapped once, then again, and the sound spread through the crowd like rain on dry ground. Marcus stood, set the guitar down gently, and looked around the room. "Keep singing," he said. "Not just here. When they forget your men, remind them with your voices." Jonas called out, "What about you, preacher?" Marcus smiled. "I'll be listening." The next morning came soft and gold. Papers were signed, doors opened, hands shook. When Marcus stepped through the final gate, the air hit him like water. Clean, wide, endless. He stopped and looked back once. The yard, the towers, the rows of men watching through narrow windows. Someone started humming. Then another. Within seconds, the sound grew, filling the compound, low and powerful, like thunder made of mercy. Briggs stood at her office window, watching. Harper beside her whispered, "They're singing again." Briggs nodded. "Let them. This time, nobody's writing them up for it." Marcus lifted his hand in farewell, the wooden cross gleaming faintly at his collar. The song followed him past the outer fence, past the checkpoint, into the long road beyond. Later, the warden would tell visitors that the strangest thing about that morning wasn't the music. It was what happened after. The report said the noise stopped at 9:03 a.m. But even hours later, if you walked through C-tier, you could feel something humming in the walls, a vibration just beneath hearing, like the place itself had learned a tune it couldn't forget. And if you listened long enough, you could almost hear words inside it, soft and sure. They banned his hymns. Then the whole prison started singing,